My name is Rachel. I was married to James for 7 years. We weren't perfect, but we were real. We laughed at the same dumb movies, fought over laundry, and made up over takeout sushi on the couch. But things changed after our third miscarriage. I shut down. He became distant. And somewhere between doctor appointments and silent dinners, we stopped touching physically and emotionally. Then came Emma, his colleague. She was funny, warm, and always had a bottle of wine and a listening ear. I met her once and I remember thinking, she feels too familiar. I brushed it off. After all, we all need friends, right? One Friday, I left work early. I had this gut feeling I couldn't explain. I walked into our house, quiet as a shadow, and heard music playing upstairs. Our playlist. I froze at the bottom of the stairs. Something about the sound of laughter above hers and his made my blood turn ice cold. I climbed those stairs one at a time, heart pounding like it wanted to escape. And there they were. In our bed. The sheets I had picked out. The same bed where I had cried alone so many nights. They didn't see me at first. I stood there long enough to let it burn into my memory. Emma's hands on his back, his face buried in her neck, like I had once known. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply said, so this is what comfort looks like now. James jumped up like he'd been shocked by a wire. Emma wrapped herself in the blanket. I don't remember what they said. Maybe it was sorry, maybe it was nothing. My ears were ringing too loud to tell. The days that followed were a blur. James begged. Emma disappeared. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The betrayal wasn't just the sex. It was the fact that he brought her into our home, our sanctuary, and let her take up space that belonged to our history. We tried counseling. I screamed at him. He cried. And the worst part? A part of me still loved him. Still does, maybe. That's the most twisted thing about emotional infidelity. It isn't always clean. It doesn't tie up in a bow. There's no guarantee your heart and your dignity will agree on the path forward. In the end, I left. I packed 2 suitcases and walked away, not because I stopped loving him, but because I finally started loving myself again. And our bed? I never slept in it again. It started out so small. So normal. At least, that's what I told myself. Just 2 people talking, laughing, venting about work, bonding over shared Spotify playlists and bad coffee. There was nothing sexual, nothing obvious. In fact, I prided myself on how harmless it was. He was just someone I could talk to when things got too heavy at home. And things were heavy. James and I were barely speaking then. We were coexisting in silence after our third miscarriage. It was like grief took all the air out of the room, and we both forgot how to breathe in front of each other. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. He was hurting too, I know that now, but back then, I felt completely alone in a house full of unspoken pain. That's when Daniel started checking in more at work. Not in a creepy way. Just casual, asking if I needed anything, complimenting my ideas in meetings, walking me to my car. He noticed when I looked tired. He remembered the smallest things, like the way I always added cinnamon to my lattes or how I hated fluorescent lights. It felt good to be seen again. We started texting after work. First it was about deadlines. Then it turned into jokes. Then memes. Then full-blown late-night conversations about life, books, fears, everything I stopped sharing with James. I would sit on one end of the couch texting, while James sat on the other watching reruns in complete silence. I remember once thinking, this is what emotional safety feels like. I didn't realize then how dangerous that sentence was. One night, I found myself deleting a message before James could see it. It wasn't even scandalous. Just something like, you always know how to make me feel less invisible. But in that moment, I knew I had crossed a line. Not physically, but emotionally? I was already gone. The scary part? I didn't want to stop. I started dressing better for work. Wearing that perfume I used to reserve for date nights. I caught myself smiling at my phone in a way I hadn't smiled in months. Daniel started saying things like, if you were mine, I'd never let you feel this unseen. And I should have told him to stop. I should have drawn the line. But I didn't. Instead, I kept walking right past that line like it never existed. It never got sexual, at least not yet, but emotionally, I was wrapped up in him. Obsessed even. I started comparing every little thing James did or didn't do to the attention Daniel gave me. I once shared with Daniel how I felt like a ghost in my own house, and he texted back, "You're not a ghost to me." I cried when I read that. Imagine that, crying over a text from a man who wasn't my husband while the man I married sat 10 feet away, clueless. I started lying to myself. Saying things like, well, at least I'm not cheating, or everyone deserves to feel desired. I blurred the lines so carefully, so subtly, that even I started believing it was innocent. But it wasn't. I knew that every time I reached out to Daniel instead of James when I had a bad day, I was choosing someone else. Every time I laughed at Daniel's jokes while resenting my husband's silence, I was creating a new bond and breaking the old one. I didn't realize how deep I was in until James found the messages. His face when he read them, I'll never forget it. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. And in that moment, I didn't either. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about Daniel, really. It was about the intimacy I felt deprived of, and how quickly I chased it the moment someone offered it to me. I was emotionally starving, and I fed myself with attention I had no business seeking. And once I started, I couldn't stop. That's how it became an obsession. One built not on passion, but on avoidance, on filling a hole in my heart with someone who wasn't my husband. It's terrifying how emotional infidelity sneaks in through cracks you didn't even know were there. Until suddenly, it splits the whole house in half. It was a Friday. I remember that detail so clearly because I never, ever came home early on Fridays. But that day, I left work 2 hours early without telling James. Something in me, maybe instinct, maybe exhaustion, told me I needed to be home. The drive was quiet. I didn't listen to music. I didn't call anyone. I was just sitting with this strange sense of unease in my chest, like something was about to go wrong but hadn't yet. I parked the car in front of our house and noticed his car was already there. That struck me first. He was supposed to be at work until 6. I walked up the steps slowly. Nothing felt immediately wrong. The lights were on. Our dog didn't bark, probably because James had let him out back. But when I opened the front door, I noticed something I hadn't heard in months. Our playlist. The one we made on our 3rd anniversary. The one with Norah Jones and Bon Iver and the love songs we used to dance to in the kitchen. And then I heard it: laughter. Soft, breathy, flirtatious laughter. A woman's voice. At first, my brain didn't register what was happening. I froze in the foyer, holding onto my purse like it could anchor me to something real. I tiptoed toward the stairs, not making a single sound, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. As I got closer to our bedroom door, which was wide open, like an insult, I could smell perfume. Not mine. Something floral and expensive. I don't know what I expected. Maybe it was denial. Maybe I thought, this can't be what it looks like. But when I stepped into that doorway, there they were. James, Emma, in our bed. He was on top of her. She was laughing, her legs wrapped around him like this was something they'd done before. My sheets, my pillows, the candle I had just bought last weekend, still burning on my nightstand. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, completely numb, watching the man I had built a life with bury his face into another woman's neck in the same spot where I had once whispered I loved him. It took them a few seconds to realize I was there. And I swear to you, that silence? It could have split the world in two. James turned around, eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. Emma scrambled to cover herself, clutching the sheets like they could somehow erase what I had seen. He stammered my name like it was some sort of excuse. I just said, "So this is what home means to you now?" I didn't wait for an answer. I walked out of the room, down the stairs, and out the front door like my legs weren't shaking beneath me. I sat in my car for 27 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the dashboard the whole time, trying to figure out whether I had imagined it. I didn't cry until I got to my sister's house. That's when it all hit me. The betrayal, the disgust, the shame, the surrealness of knowing that the most sacred space I had, our bed, was no longer mine. It had been shared, invaded, desecrated, even. He didn't just cheat. He brought her into the most intimate part of our life. Into the mattress where we had once made love, laughed, healed, and mourned. Into the room where we tried for children. Into the space where I had held him after his father died. And now, that bed was no longer a place I could sleep. It was a crime scene. When I went back to the house a few days later to grab my things, I couldn't even look at the bedroom. I left the door shut, like it could contain the memory. I packed my clothes from the guest room closet and avoided stepping on the hardwood floor in front of our door, as if walking too close would make it real again. James tried to apologize, said it was a mistake, that he wasn't thinking clearly. But I could still see the candle burning, the music still playing, the way Emma smiled under him. No, that wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. 1,000 little choices that led to that exact moment. And now, no matter how many times he said sorry, I could never unsee it. Never unsmell it. Never unfeel that cold shock in my bones when I realized the person I trusted most had turned our love into a lie. He didn't just break my heart. He desecrated our sacred space. And I will never forget the sound of that laughter echoing down the hallway like a ghost I didn't invite.